At level 1, you've got your foot soldiers. These were considered to be the backbone of the Empire, as these were the main people that everyday citizens and criminals had to deal with. But even though they were swarming every inch of the galaxy, that meant that the Empire had no problem letting them die. Typically, these soldiers were seen in anything between a squad and platoon, and the command for these groups didn't rise above the platoon level. The absolute lowest and simplest level of the foot soldiers were the Imperial army troops that we saw dressed in black armor throughout the events of Andor. This group made up the main front line of the army, and they were initially recruited from the local systems that they were already occupying. These were the army regulars that were used to enforce the law on planets that were already under the Empire's control. After that, we jumped to Stormtroopers, who were considered to be elite foot soldiers. Initially, during the time of the Galactic Empire, Stormtroopers who were still just clones that were created for use in the Clone Wars. But later on, the Empire started conscripting soldiers and taking volunteers. An example of this comes from the Solo Star Wars story, where Han Solo and many others on Corellia decided to volunteer for the Empire to escape their bad living condition. After getting a promotion, Stormtroopers became corporals, and they would be recognized by their black pauldron. The next promotion was to Sergeant, where the Stormtrooper would be adorned with a white pauldron. If a Stormtrooper took the commissioned officer route, they would be promoted to commanders and get their orange pauldron. The absolute highest rank a simple Stormtrooper could hope to reach was to be a Stormtrooper Chief, where they would earn a red pauldron. At this rank, sometimes the Stormtrooper wasn't put into combat roles and would instead be used to train new recruits or be a military advisor to foreign militaries. Sometimes Stormtroopers got the chance to dive into specialized areas of combat, and these are some of the more memorable versions of Stormtroopers. Scout Troopers specialized in recon and long-distance warfare. They were heavily featured on the forest moon of Endor and Lothal. Next came the Death Trooper, which was decked out in an all-black armor, and they were specialized in espionage, stealth, and executions. The Incinerator Stormtroopers were classes that specialized in fire, and their armor was coated with cryoplast in order to let them withstand the extreme temperatures of their fire. Also, on tropical systems, shore troopers were present, but this was a very small specialty. At level 2, you've got your junior officers that were seen within the Army, Navy, and ISB sectors. While the first level was known for being foot soldiers and the first line of defense and offense, this was where the paper pushers and leaders came into play. Starting out at one of the lowest level of commissioned officers, we've got lieutenants, which were also broken up into junior and senior levels. This rank was seen in the Army and Navy, and they were decorated with 2 blue squares in a line for junior lieutenant, and a senior lieutenant had 2 blue squares on top of 2 red squares. A more specialized unit in this level were known as ISB attendants, and these were junior officers that served as assistants to ISB supervisors in the Imperial Security Bureau. Attendants didn't specialize in one specific area of the organization, and they were thrown wherever they were needed, such as manning the ISB data vault, which was the job given to attendant Felzonis. Their outfits were adorned with 2 blue squares showing that they had reached the rank of lieutenant, but they pretty much served their supervisors as underlings at the Coruscant office. At level 3, we have the mid-level officers who were known as the Empire's middle management sector. Those under them feared them, but they were insignificant to their superiors. You've got captains, and these officers were decorated with 3 blue squares on top of 3 red squares. While this rank could technically be held by Stormtroopers, it was traditionally held by officers that led other commissioned officers from a distance. Another rank seen was the commandant level, and these officers oversaw the comings and goings of specific installations such as prison camps, garrisons, and Imperial academies. Sticking with the ISB ranks, we have the supervisors that really ran the operations. The likes of Andor gave us a great look at how the ISB worked, and supervisors ran everything in the organization. Dedra Meero was a notable supervisor whose ambitions led her to her own doom. Each supervisor was put in charge of a specific task force or group of planetary systems, and they all reported to Major Leo Partagaz. The ISB board consisted of many supervisors coming together to discuss the comings and goings of their systems and businesses. For ISB personnel that performed in the field more often, they were given the rank of agent. While supervisors came up with operations to fulfill their needs, the agents were known to actually conduct and oversee the operations to make sure they went the way that the ISB desired. A notable ISB agent was seen in Rebels, in the form of Agent Callus. While Callus was sent all over the galaxy, he was primarily sent to Lothal to oversee operations of the TIE Fighter facility and make sure that Governor Pryce followed through with her duties. Technically, this rank was also known as captains, and they commanded platoons of stormtroopers and other specialized units. The next promotion took members of the ISB, Army, and Navy to the rank of Major, We've already talked about one major in the ISB, Major Leo Partagas, who ran the ISB Board of Supervisors. In the Navy and Army divisions, the rank was denoted a few different ways, such as 6 tiles, with 4 yellow and 2 red on the left side, and another showed it as 8 tiles divided into 2 rows, with the top rows being red tiles and the bottom containing blue tiles. Traditionally, these officers wore black uniforms with code cylinders on either side of their uniforms and rank insignia. After that, members of the Army and ISB could be promoted to the rank of colonel. While being a colonel was an extremely high-ranking official, there would later be the option of reaching high colonel. A notable colonel in the Imperial military was Colonel Wolf Yularen, who transitioned from being a Republic admiral to being an ISB colonel who was best known for hunting down rebel spies throughout the galaxy. We also saw him at the table when Darth Vader and Grand Moff Tarkin met with other high-ranking Imperial officials. Next, at level 4, you've got the members of the Empire that move entire fleets and win wars, the Senior Command. These members are known as the Hand of the Empire, and they are restricted to the Army and Navy branches of the military. Commodore is the rank that Thrawn held prior to being promoted to Admiral, and the insignia was shown one of 3 ways. 3 blue tiles on the left, and 3 red tiles on the right that was accompanied with 4 code cylinders, a plaque with 4 red tiles on top of 4 blue tiles and 3 code cylinders, or 5 red tiles on top of 5 blue tiles with 2 code cylinders. Typically, this rank commanded their own Imperial Star Destroyer, and they were in charge of a fleet. Moving on up, you've got Navy commanders along with Brigadier Generals. A notable Brigadier General was Brigadier General Navarre, who was present for the battle on Hoth. This specific general was extremely incompetent though, as he was given information about the rebel base on Hoth long before the battle took place, and he got rid of the intelligence that would have seen the Empire attacking the rebels long before they were able to establish Echo Base properly on Hoth. Finally, we've reached the rank of General. Some of the notable generals in the Empire include General Veers, who led the ground assault against Echo Base on Hoth, General Tag, who was present for the meeting with Grand Moff Tarkin and Darth Vader, General Bast, who tried to have Grand Moff Tarkin evacuate the Death Star prior to its destruction, and General Hess, who was killed by Mayfield when he was helping the Mandalorian. Each of these generals were in charge of regiments all the way up to sector garrisons. At level 5, we've reached the warlords of the Empire that are masters of war and extremely strategic. High generals were put in charge of a systems army, and they were in charge of non-combatant headquarters that was largely bureaucratic. This rank was more managerial as they were in charge of keeping track of their sector's resources, and they decided when reinforcements would be deployed to different areas of their sectors in combat. Some notable high generals were High General Tag, after his promotion, and High General Tono, who was put in charge of an Imperial garrison on Sphivrin. Next, we have Grand Generals, and this is the absolute highest rank in the Imperial Army. The rank was only created after the Imperial Navy created the rank of Grand Admiral, and it was established in the year 10 BBY. One of the most notable Grand Generals was Grand General Tag, after yet another promotion, and he is one of the only officials who were able to follow his rise through the ranks. One key perk of this rank was the ability to place most wanted bounties on targets that were deemed dangerous and enemies of the Empire. The only 4 people known to carry this title were Levinus, Kenner Loring, Ormedin, and Tag. Then we have Vice Admirals. Inside the Navy, this rank was given the title of Fleet Admiral and was placed in charge of a cage, but there was also a Systems Admiral who was in charge of a systems force. This position was also known as Commodore, and the most notable Vice Admiral was Thrawn, prior to his promotion to Grand Admiral, who was the only non-human to reach this rank. This was the highest level of fleet command that was typically present during the operations of the fleet, as higher ranks typically kept their distance and stayed on their own home base or ship to command the others. The Vice Admiral was typically in their own larger Star Destroyer where they could oversee operations of the entire fleet or supporting systems without being in the middle of combat. Finally, we have the High Admiral, which was a rank granted to the leading Moff of a certain sector. A Moff was a political rank given to governors of specific sectors, and this had its own rank system leading up to Grand Moff. This was a title given to Grand Moff Tarkin, who was put in charge of the construction and operation of the Death Star. Following this, you have Grand Admirals, who were one of 12 people who answered directly to the Emperor. Even though there were 12 of them, the most notable and active one of these was Grand Admiral Thrawn. The 12 members of this rank were considered to be the most strategic members of the Empire, and the most trusted officials to still hold a rank in the military. At level 6, we've reached the rulers of their sectors who were able to turn the war into their strength of rule. Starting out, we have directors, and the most notable of this rank is Krennic, who was in charge of designing and constructing the first Death Star. Directors were typically heads of specific bureaus and divisions such as the ISB and science divisions. With that, they also answered to higher-ranked officials that were really the leaders of their sectors. These officials were known as governors, like Governor Price on the planet of Lothal. These officials were known more as bureaucrats that played more of a political position than a combat officer. But for those with high ambitions of moving up in the ranks, this was the perfect opportunity to show that you could control the people of a system as well as the military presence. These officials typically wore the traditional gray Imperial uniform or wore a white outfit with insignia showing 6 blue squares over 3 red and 3 yellow. Following this, we reach Moffs and Grand Moff. As we mentioned before, Moffs were put in charge of their own sectors, with the greatest of them being promoted to Grand Moff, such as Grand Moff Tarkin. Another notable Moff was Moff Gideon, who was the wielder of the Darksaber and in charge of the construction of a special armored unit while dealing with the remaining Mandalorians. Another notable Grand Moff was Grand Moff Rand, who was in charge of the Outer Rim territories after the Battle of Endor. In the final level, we reach the supreme authority of the galaxy as the 2 Dark Lords commanded with an iron fist and strong will. Darth Vader was known to be the supreme commander of the Empire, but this title was held by General Cassio Tag first, after the Battle of Yavin. This title essentially rules as the commander-in-chief of the military, and all major decisions and moves are orders sent out by the supreme commander. After Tag was stripped of his position by Sidious and killed by Darth Vader, Vader took over the role of Supreme Commander, as he ruled as Sidious's second-in-command until his death during the Battle of Endor. The Supreme Commander was briefed daily by the Joint Chiefs, and he created the agenda for the entire military to be dealt with by the supporting ranks. Finally, we've reached the absolute ruler, Emperor Palpatine. The entire Emperor was created by and run through him, and even after his death, his presence was still felt throughout the galaxy while the remnants continued his mission. Palpatine ruled as Supreme Chancellor prior to the creation of the Empire, but once they were founded, he immediately took up the mantle of Emperor and ruled the galaxy through fear and power. His will was absolute, but the only officials that would deal with him directly were the Supreme Commander, a few Grand Moffs, and the 12 Grand Admirals. While Palpatine pretended to have the galaxy's best hopes at heart, everything he did with the Empire was for his own personal gain and missions.